Hi, and thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 43 of the Dream 10X podcast. It's your boy JC
and Dr. Capel.
It's the end of March here, end of the first quarter, and it's been a doozy of a year so far. And this month, we've had a few people that were key players in the technology industry pass away, namely Stephen Wilhite. I don't know if you remember him. He created the GIF, the graphical interchange format.
So it is GIF, not GIF.
It's GIF.
Okay.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
It's GIF.
GIF
and also read an obituary this weekend in the Wall Street Journal about a man named John Roach. And again, James Haggerty wrote this obituary. He's a great obituary writer. But John Roach was from Fort Worth, Texas, and he was an executive in the Tandy Corporation. Have you ever heard of the Tandy Corporation?
What's
this
that?
is not the Tandem Computer Company, but the Tandy Corporation.
Oh, yeah, my dad had one of those.
Tandy Corporation ran Radio Shack. They ran Radio Shack.
Yeah.
And I used to love Radio Shack as a kid. I loved all the Heath kits and all the electronic kits that you could buy there and do all these experiments and stuff. But Tandy also created the TRS-80 computer.
Yeah, we had one of those.
You did?
Yeah.
That was my very first computer,
Yeah.
TRS-80 color computer, and I loved that thing. I was just a kid, and that's where I started getting my chops, learning to program BASIC on a TRS color computer, and it was just a desktop thing, and you'd plug it into your TV, and you could just start programming in BASIC, looking at your TV screen.
That's
and
so cool.
You recorded your programs on a compact disc, or not a disc. What am I thinking?
Floppy disk.
No, not a floppy disk. A tape. Tape.
A
Tape cassette. Tape cassette. That's what we called them. Tape cassette.
Good Lord.
You know what a tape cassette is?
I'm not that young.
It was a tape cassette. You would record your program to that, and it would turn slowly, and it would take minutes to record your little program on that thing. And then if you wanted to load it back, then you just press play on the tape cassette player, and it would load it onto the computer again. Oh, it was
cool.
Magical time. So anyway, I just wanted to point out John Roach, and he just passed away. He was born in 1938, died in 2022, and that's a great computing platform there, the TRS-80. So rip those two guys. So this week we're talking about a book called Blue Ocean Strategy. Have you ever heard of Blue Ocean Strategy?
Yes, I read it a million years ago.
Yeah? Mm-hmm. You read this book?
Yeah.
Oh. See, all I'm doing here is trying to catch up with
what
her.
James reads, what I read now.
Because you already read it. So this book was recommended to me by somebody in my mastermind, and so I got it and just finished reading it. And it was written by W. Chan Kim and Renee Mauborgne, and both of these people are associated with NSEED. Have you heard of NSEED? NSEED is one of the world's top renowned MBA program, and I think it's based in Europe. It's mostly out of Paris.
Cool.
But the interesting thing about NSEED is that it was created by Georges Doriot. And we've talked about Georges Doriot before. I don't know if you remember. And his name sounded familiar, and I was like, I know we've talked about him. I got to refresh my memory. And sure enough, it was in episode 22 when we talked about Tom Perkins, Valley Boy, the venture capitalist.
That's pretty cool.
Venture capitalism really all started with Georges Doriot. So Georges Doriot was an immigrant from France. He came to the United States. He went to Harvard Business School. He ended up being a professor at Harvard Business School. And then he created a company called American Research and Development, ARD. And that was one of, if not the first venture firm in America.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Huh.
So anyway, NSEED, Georges Doriot, Georges Doriot founded NSEED.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that he got going. Fascinating guy. And I have this book sitting on my bookshelf about Georges Doriot. It's called Creative Capital, and so all of these are investment books that I've had that I want to start focusing on these. A lot of good books here, especially this one about Sam Snell. He's a really interesting character. I really like him. A Jew who escaped Nazi Germany or Nazi World War II era, left Hungary, I think, came to the United States, became a very successful real estate investor. Georges Doriot. So these are some of the books that are on my to-do list here. Looking forward to learning more about venture capital in the United States. So anyway, that's how NC came to be, Georges Doriot. That's who these guys are from.
That's really cool.
Anything else I wanted to say there? No. All right. So anyway, just looking at my notes here on this book, packed full of information. It's a business book primarily, and it's about blue ocean strategies. And so, what's a blue ocean strategy? So here are my top 5 takeaways from this book. And the first one is describing and explaining what a blue ocean strategy is. What is a blue ocean? What would you say a blue ocean is?
Well, let's start with what a red ocean is.
Okay.
What's a red ocean?
Oh, you're going to bounce it to me. A red ocean is a highly competitive business environment where there's just lots of competition. And basically, companies are entrenched with one another when they're in a red ocean environment, red ocean competitive environment, because they're continuously looking at their competition solely, and they're trying to outmaneuver one another, trying to eke out a little bit more profit out of the other, innovate a little bit from all the other people in the competition, and you're kind of entrenched in competition warfare in a business environment, and you're not looking at the broader perspective of what the broader market of what might be possible in the broader market. So that's red ocean.
And what does leadership look like in the red ocean?
Just what I said. They're focused primarily on the competition that they're dealing with.
What does leadership do differently?
You tell me.
Okay, so I didn't know how much you got into that piece of it, but they really focus on in red ocean, like who that leader is, with their qualities and traits, and versus the behaviors and actions. Like blue ocean leadership is more like actions, the actions that they take, not who the leader needs to be, which I thought was really interesting. And then, it's as you said, they're connected less in red ocean, less to reality and less to their customer. And they want to really focus on the middle or they want to focus on the higher level, what the senior executives want and the executives want, versus blue ocean, where it's really looking at what a middle managers need and empowering the people on the front lines to really take action where they can.
Okay. I would also argue that blue ocean, so a blue ocean, a competitive environment, is where your company has wide open space to innovate and address new customer wants and needs without any competition, really. And I would say that a blue ocean competitive environment is more customer focused.
Absolutely, yeah.
Whereas in the red ocean, you're more just you're more focused on your competition and trying to outmaneuver them and figure out what they're doing.
Competition, what leadership wants versus what your customer wants.
Yeah. So the blue ocean sounds like the place where your company wants to be for the most part. However, I think the company's never fully in either blue ocean or red ocean. It's kind of a combination of the two, especially when companies are able to diversify their products and services. Then you typically get a mix of both. You've got some products and services that are entrenched still and the red ocean competition, whereas others we got some green grass, blue field, blue ocean over here. It's wide open. So, and things are constantly changing. So you rarely have just a pure blue ocean situation in your company. So that's the distinction between blue versus red. Never had thought of that before, so that was a good takeaway. My second takeaway from this book is that red ocean and business environments are less desirable because of that intense competition that we just talked about. And like I said, things are never really just black and white or blue or red. It's generally a combination of the two, and that companies can offer diversity of their products and services, just like I said, and red ocean competition is not all that bad because it forces the company to evolve and do things that help them survive. And whereas because of that competition, so because of that competitive stress that companies are under, it forces a company to do things that help them to become better and stronger. Whereas in a blue ocean environment, you're not typically you're not, nobody's competing with you, so you're doing well, and you don't typically want to change from what you're doing when you're doing well. Okay,
And
so
then everybody copies you, and then you're in a red ocean. Then you got to find your new blue ocean.
right,
Yeah.
it's an ever changing dynamic. So number 3, blue ocean examples of blue ocean situations. What do those look like? And so Appendix A of the book is really interesting in that regard because it gives a lot of good examples for what companies look like in a blue ocean environment. And one of the ones that I thought, one of the business anecdotes that I thought was really good was the one about Ford and the Model T. In 1908, I did not know this, but there were over 500 automobile manufacturers in 1908.
No way! I had no idea.
I always thought Ford was like the first,
The only one.
the only one.
Yeah.
But they weren't. They came on the scene later, and there were 500 companies all like clamoring to get this new technology out to the people.
Wow,
This
that blows me away.
this automotive combustion engine technology out to the people then. And their main competition at the time were horse-drawn carriages.
Which we should go back to.
And so, and that's really interesting. So, horse-drawn carriages at the time cost about $800. I think that's in 1908 dollars, not in current day dollars. I think, I'm not sure.
Minus like cost of the horse and maintaining the horse and all that.
Yeah, but then when you factor in the cost of a car,
Yeah.
you know, fuel and maintenance and oil and all that stuff, that adds up too. So, so Ford came onto the scene and basically wiped out all the competition. And he did that by making the Model T very simple. It was a very simple automotive platform. You only had one choice of color.
Oh.
That was black.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. Like, customers didn't have a choice there. Yeah. He just said you can only have black, and that's what they got.
Yeah,
and they
it's like
loved
branding.
it. It was simple.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have to think. That's what you're getting.
And you will like it.
But things changed from there, interestingly enough, especially with GMC and all the companies after that. But at the time, that was how he differentiated his company. Very simple, very not a lot of choice in what you got. What else here? The production line, he simplified the production line greatly. So you didn't have these craftsmen working on each of the individual pieces of the car and assembling it. He made it so simple that he could hire anybody off the street, teach them what to do in any given position along the assembly line, and they could then assemble the car. And he got the time down for car assembly down from, I think it was almost a month, something like 21 days or something, down to just 4 days.
Wow.
And he got the cost down significantly as well. So it was all about the assembly line at that point in reducing the cost. And so cost is important, obviously. I mean, you got to get your cost down so you can have a better price valuation offering for your customers.
So it's kind of like McDonald's, where they had the whole map of, they realized that it was inefficient the way they cooked burgers, and so they mapped it out on the floor and took turns to, okay, interesting.
Yeah, it's all about reducing the cost
Yeah.
Within the company for what it takes you to produce a product.
Huh.
And so they ultimately got over the course of something like 4 years or something like that, Ford got the cost down to $290 for a Model T, whereas in 1924 the cost of a horse and buggy was $400. So as a customer, that's almost a no-brainer, right?
But then you don't have a horse anymore.
But you see everybody else able to travel so much
Yeah.
further and do so much more with a $290 vehicle as opposed to the I'm gonna keep my screen alive here, as opposed to the $400 horse and buggy option.
Yeah.
At that point, he had global appeal for his product, and I thought that was really, really interesting. Two key a lot of key takeaways there. Simplicity, very simple product. A multitude of options aren't always the best. That's not always what your customer wants. They don't always want to have to. For me, like, especially when I'm looking at a brand new. Here's a great example: surfboard skegs.
Oh my gosh!
I was researching. I want to build a surfboard with my daughter, and so I'm I don't know anything about surfboards, so I'm researching surfboards and trying to figure out what kind of skeg do I need to get her. The little what do you call those things? Skegs. The
little fins that are
fins.
on the bottom.
Little fins on the bottom of a surfboard. There are so many types of fins to get, and I just wanted to. I don't know what I want. I just wanted to build a surfboard with my daughter, a cheap surfboard, just for the experience. There's so many skegs you could choose from. I had no idea, and that is a great example of how there's too many options for the consumer.
And even when you were looking up options, it didn't tell you what the skegs did. Like, how does it change how the surfboard moves? It was just, do you want the shape? So there was no help to help you make that decision.
Yeah. There's absolutely nothing out there and it just took so much time to research. I'm like, I'll just throw a dart on the board and let's just pick the cheapest one. So simplicity is huge, and I really love that. Reducing internal costs is a really great thing to take to heart from a company perspective. Mm-hmm. Things you can do to reduce the overall cost of producing a product or service, and then the reduction of the overall price and the increase of the value that you offer to your customers. So you're offering a low price and a huge value that they can't turn away. All of a sudden you got blue ocean right there. Like Model T became the car for everybody essentially, even though there were over 500 automobile makers. That just blows me away.
That I had no idea. Wow.
So that's a red ocean at the time. He's like a shark. He swims into this red ocean and kills everybody and creates a blue ocean. I love that. So that was my third takeaway. Fourth takeaway from this book. There is actually a process that this book defines or lays out that companies can follow to find their blue ocean. So that was really interesting too. So if you're in a company and you find yourself in a red ocean, hey, this book has got a process and a strategy framework that you can follow to help you identify blue ocean areas that you can move your company into and how to go about doing it. So some of those. Now, I have to admit that the process was a little confusing to me, and I had to go read through it again, and it's a step-by-step thing. It's very detailed, and I'm not an MBA, right? I mean, just look at me. So it takes a while to assimilate that formula, but it is here in this book. Some of the formula includes reconstruct market boundaries. So basically have a broader market look at what your competition is. Don't just focus on where you're currently selling, but go beyond that. Open up your lens there. Focus on big picture and not on numbers. I thought that was really interesting because numbers can be deceiving, oddly enough. I mean, a lot of companies brag about being data-driven, but the data can be deceiving if you're not looking at a big picture. So that's a really key point that I took away there.
Plus, data-driven doesn't really necessarily take in all of the humanity piece of it.
Yep.
And so it's not a holistic approach if you're primarily data-driven.
Yep.
Which a lot of executives are.
Yep. Reach beyond existing demand. Identify non-customers. I thought that was really interesting too. Don't just look at who your current customers are, but try to identify who your non-customers are. And a great anecdote here was on page 105, talking about golf, the world of golf. And this particular company, Callaway, wanted to know, why are there some people who join up in different clubs and sports enthusiasts? Why don't they take up golf? What is it about them that causes them not to take up golf? And I hate golf, by the way. So I thought this was really funny. So they found these people out and they talked to them and they asked them. And they asked, what is it about golf that you don't like? And the main theme across all of these verbal surveys that they did, interviews, was that it's too hard to hit that little white ball and then it's a pain in the butt, to go find it and all that stuff. So they took that information and they created a new driver called Big Bertha. And I think this is so funny because I went golfing with some work buddies way back when, and I knew nothing about golf really. And one of them had a Big Bertha and one had a Killer Bee, and that was kind of the joke. Like, hey, give me the Big Bertha, because that was the only thing I could hit the ball with was like the Killer Bee or the Big Bertha. So I was borrowing their drivers to hit the ball. So anyway, I thought this was pretty funny. So they created this big head on a driver called the Big Bertha, and it made it makes it easier for people to hit the ball with from a driver. So all of a sudden, golf has a larger appeal to people, and so that helped them find a blue ocean and they dominated their market for drivers for up to 10 years.
Wow, that's incredible.
Because of that. And one of the key things to take away from that is they actually talked to people who weren't their customers, but they talked to people who were in the general vicinity of what their market was. People who were in that, kind of tangentially related to golf in some way, but weren't actually participating in golf.
Yeah. That's really smart.
Yeah, talk to them.
Oh my God, talk
Ask
to people. What do they want?
Don't sit in your cube looking at data. Yeah. Go out and talk to people. Find out what it is. Find out what the real deal is. So what are we talking about here? This was the fourth one. Third.
I thought it was the fourth one.
I lost my notes.
The fourth one.
The fourth one. Was it the fourth one already?
I thought it was the fourth one.
Okay, the process. Yeah, process people can follow. Another key takeaway from the process was this idea of tipping point leadership. Have you heard of that?
I have not.
Ha ha! Tipping point leadership. This was good. Tipping point leadership is all about talking to people and finding out what their interests and what their drivers are. Tipping point leadership is actually about changing an organization, changing paradigms, changing thought processes by actually showing people the problem that you're trying to solve. And one of the great stories here was about New York City Police Commissioner Bill Bratton, who helped reduce crime greatly. 39 murders got reduced down to 39% in New York City. 50%. Felony crime, 39%. Theft, 35%. And he did this all in 2 years when he became the new police commissioner. And he used this type of leadership called tipping point leadership. And one of the things he did was to actually show decision makers firsthand what the problems were. So looking at the data, the crime rate in New York City on the subways was only something like 3%. It was something really low. So the police force didn't go down to the subways and stuff because the data showed that it wasn't a problem. So they were trying to focus their resources on where the data showed the problems were. Come to find out, though, nobody was riding the subways because there was so much crime on the subways. And so many people like jumping the turnstiles and not paying, and it was just rampant chaos. The reality was chaos on the subways.
Yeah.
So what Bratton did was take key leadership down to the subways and made them ride.
Oh, that's smart.
And when they did that, they realized, holy crap, this is a mess.
Yeah.
We need to solve this. So one of the things he did was start putting cops on the cars. And that helped clean up a lot of that issue. And so there was a lot of those things, like, driving the beat with him.
Yeah.
Even though he was a commissioner, he would go drive the beat and see, well, what's the real deal? And so tipping point leadership is about addressing reality, and it's about getting the kingpins in the organization all together and getting them to help drive change. So addressing the change on the fringes rather than trying to get the whole organization to change at once. And so he was able to affect great change in 2 years as opposed to a Jack Welch type of organizational change that took 10 years or so. So tipping point leadership, that was really, really interesting. And then finally, my fifth big takeaway from this book was information about the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Keep the screen alive. No, I'll touch the pad yet. F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. You never heard of it?
Nope.
Okay, so you've heard of the Navy, right?
What's that?
So the Navy, the Marines, and the Air Force used to all have their own type of fighter. You know, the Air Force had that, what was it, F-15 or F-16 or whatever, and the Navy had F-18. What do the Marines have? AV-8 Harrier. These were all aircraft that the individual branches had that were quickly becoming out of date and all that kind of thing.
It's out of date. That's the Navy. Got it.
Although I think it's kind of funny that they said, "Oh, our aircraft is out of date. We need to revamp it." And then you think about the A-10, the Warthog. You know what the A-10 is? It's still around. Still a great platform for killing tanks and stuff. But anyway, so these three branches were like, "Hey, we need new aircraft. DoD, please give us something because our aircraft are getting old and outdated." So DoD came up with a blue ocean idea to combine what each of the individual branches requirements were for a new aircraft into a single aircraft. So basically you have one aircraft to rule them all, and that became the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter idea. And so in my mind it's like, oh, that promised to reduce overall cost to the government, to DoD or whatever, by roughly a third by combining all of them into one platform. However, the execution of the idea proved not as great. Like there were a ton of cost overruns and all that, but and I don't know the full history of it, but I just thought this was really interesting. Primarily because of the idea of combining the wants and desires of all these three forces into one thing. I thought that's a really brilliant move. Yeah. I really like that. However, I think the execution proved very complicated because of the fact that you were combining requirements from three different stovepipe branches, and I can imagine just what a huge headache that has been. And ultimately, what happened is. I was just looking at Wikipedia real quick before this. So now we have an F-35 Joint Strike Fighter. However, there are three different variants of that fighter. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe it would have just been best to, hey, Navy, you go develop your ultimate fighting platform. And Air Force, you go to, maybe that would have been more efficient at the end of the day. And this whole concept, this whole engineering concept of monolithic versus modular is just such an interesting thing that all organizations wrestle with. And I think it would be an interesting, I don't know if there's a book out there already that talks about that, but how to think about modular versus monolithic and pros and cons, and I don't know. It's just an interesting thing. But,
it is, yeah.
So F-35 is still around. There are three different variants apparently, and I just thought that was funny. It segues really nicely with when we talked about the Disney Bob Iger book, because I remember talking about how they approached Marvel to buy them and how it was such a slam dunk because they had a catalog of all these great characters that they could build out into individual movies, and how that was like such a great intellectual property thing that they had to offer. Oh, but in terms of Blue Ocean, Marvel... Take it away!
Oh, goodness. So Marvel has been around a long time, and in the 30s when they were created, they were like all the other comic book companies, the same kind of superheroes and those kinds of things. So they were in a red ocean. And so in the 60s, my hero, Stan Lee, of course, and figured out how to diversify Marvel a little bit by creating superheroes that would relate not to children, because that was the target market, but to college-age people. And so they focused on superheroes as humans first. So you look at Spider-Man, he's definitely teenage kid going all through his teenage hormones and things, and superhero second. And so the Hulk, all these other characters, obviously human first and superhero second. And so that really appealed to a totally different non-customer. And obviously it took off. This is why all the She-Hulk comics are out, although She-Hulk was not created till the 80s. The sensational She-Hulk.
I read these books, she reads comic books.
Yeah.
She has a doctorate, I'm an idiot.
So that was one Blue Ocean tactic that they did, which I thought was really cool by really changing their market focus and picking up non-customers. There's a whole case study on the Blue Ocean website, just so you know if you ever want to read it. And then they looked at, so they hired their new management, they're wildly successful, things are amazing, executives start taking all the money, there's lots of middle management, and they start to go bankrupt. So like, oh crap, we're going bankrupt. Now what do we do? So they hired in a new CEO, and he took a look at a different way. So he used the 4 frameworks, eliminated, Hollywood style operations, eliminated the big offices, the high salaries, eliminated middle management, because nobody needs those folks. I'm one of them, so what can I say? I'm not needed. My team's awesome. They eliminated a lot of the infrastructure that was creating all these costs, and changed again their leadership style to be more frontline, empowering everybody to create that creative story, have that emotional connection, like Pixar, if you want to look at Pixar and some of the ways that brain trust to create that emotional connection with their customer. And then they used creative committees to create their own universe, which is this whole comic book portfolio that you mentioned. Yeah.
Portfolio.
And then they went to Disney and got merged with Disney. And so that really saved the company, their new approach. And that would have been wildly unthinkable to merge with
$1 billion move. Literally $1 billion move. Right
and then by going into Hollywood movies, it just totally transformed the industry. And then picked up, all of us old folks who loved the comics as a kid, re-engaged us in this genre. And of course, I rebuilt my collection. So
I love that. Thank you very much for adding that to it. And also, you picked up on the 4. What do you call those?
Yeah, it's the 4 frameworks. I actually use this.
The 4 frameworks. Also, there's a big mention in here that I didn't pull out, but those are very important.
It is. And I actually use this when I do create learning opportunities for people. And I did a value proposition of learning for my last organization based on this, saying that here's all the stuff that's wrong, here's where we're good. But overall, this is where we can really diversify ourselves within our organization in a training industry. And it was successful after I left, so that was good.
And we're talking about the raise, eliminate, create, and reduce. Those are
raise is which factors should be raised well above the industry standard. Eliminate is what needs to go. Reduce is the factors that are below the standards. And then create is what's new and exciting. So you mix those 4 together and voila!
Yeah, you've got innovation, and not just innovation for the sake of innovation, but innovation for the sake of providing a value proposition to some new set and existing set of customers.
Yep.
So that's it in a nutshell. Thank you very much for that. That's great. That's why she has a doctorate. Blue Ocean Strategy. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in April. Over now.
Bye.